Martin here, first journalist from Cornwall Live. I'm here at the National Maritime Museum Cornwall and here doing some pictures of the new exhibition, Pirates exhibition that they've got on. And I thought you might like a little look around, get a sneak preview of this exhibition. So let's switch this off my face and we'll go inside and have a look. So, I'll go through these doors. It's not actually open yet. Opens this Friday, but we get to have a little look whilst they're just finishing off everything in here. Okay, so here we go. This is where we start, and we're here meeting Eric Pentry, who's the curator of this exhibition.
Great. Welcome to the world of pirates.
Well, we walk straight in, and there's a lot going on. There's this huge screen here. What's going on?
Well,
here?
we're taking you backwards. We're looking at the image of pirates, and this is really the latest iteration. It's a film made by Rare, who create Sea of Thieves, and they've done this film especially for us, just to show us how the images of pirates today can be traced right back to their very earliest beginnings, which is the theme of the exhibition.
And you're saying this is something to do, is it a computer game?
Yes, Sea of Thieves is the world's best-selling pirate game. Around the world there are 30 million subscribers to it, so it is huge.
I'm obviously too old.
Yeah, you and me both, yes.
Well, let's have a look further on at the exhibition with some of the stuff that we might recognise as pirates.
And the thesis of the exhibition essentially is, why do we love pirates? Because were they good people? Were they exciting people? So let's kind of unpick those stories.
And of course, it's here in Falmouth, it's the absolute perfect place to have this exhibition.
It is. So we're starting here with kind of pirates that you will recognise, flags that you've seen 1,000 times before. If you look, say, at this flag here, this is always supposed to be Calico Jack's flag.
No, right, so tell us a little bit about that. So that's the Jolly Roger, is it?
That's not the Jolly Roger. That's some 19th century or maybe early 20th century imagination of what Calico Jack's flag might have been like.
I see.
But of course, younger people will recognise the Playmobil pirates.
Of course, yeah.
The iconic Jack Sparrow.
There we go, Jack Sparrow. He's got to be in any pirate exhibition. He's got to be there.
Yeah. Gina Davis from Cutthroat Island,
Wow.
which was a total flop, and everybody said after that no one is ever going to make a pirate film again. And then up pops Johnny Depp and Pirates of the Caribbean. And, as you know, it's gone from strength to strength.
So we're walking down the ramp, as it were, here, and we can see all the exhibition goes out there below us.
We're still putting the finishing touches to it.
Yes,
It's not
there's still a few
quite
days
ready.
to go, isn't there?
Yeah, there's always a bit of a panic towards the end, but we'll get there.
So is this the first time that the National Maritime Museum Cornwall has had a pirates exhibition?
As far as I know, we're doing it actually in collaboration with the National Maritime Museum in Greenwich. They had a show in the 1990s, but that was a very long time ago, and our take is slightly different. We're not looking at pirates from the beginning of time to today. We're looking very specifically at the so-called golden age of pirates, which is kind of roughly 1680 to 1720, when all the pirates we've heard of, like Blackbeard and Calico Jack, they were all around at that time. But then after that, piracy doesn't end, but it sort of peters out a bit.
Right, so there's not so much of Somali pirates in this exhibition.
It's difficult because when we think about pirates of the Golden Age, we're always thinking about from the pirate's perspective. But if you're looking at Somali pirates and their stories, it's generally the stories of the victim. That story has yet to be written, from the true. But we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get into the exhibition, because it is a very important point.
So I can see all sorts of outfits that we're coming round to here.
This is where the exhibition really begins. The idea of where does this idea come from? So we're encapsulating it really in four elements here. Another figure from Sea of Thieves, Captain Flameheart. It's kind of slightly bizarre that this two-dimensional game have realised a three-dimensional figure for it, but it's fantastic, isn't it? And then, of course, the iconic Jack Sparrow. Then Vivienne Westwood did a pirate collection, hugely influential. But then again, for this exhibition, we've commissioned this costume. This is the very first costume that was made for the first production of Peter Pan.
Oh, wow.
This is Captain Hook as he would have appeared. Actually, his costume was kind of quite greasy and kind of a bit revolting, but we decided to actually make it a bit more new. Other people might think it was the original one. This was made specifically for us.
Oh, fantastic, look at that.
But you can tell kind of just how elegant it was. But Hook, as we'll discover later, was actually a very frightening figure when he was first put on the stage.
Right.
And he was played by Gerald du Maurier, Daphne du Maurier's dad. And small children ran out of the theatre in terror when they saw this awful face. So then we kind of go into exploring how we came across this idea that pirates were an exciting thing. And of course a lot of it is owed to Treasure Island.
Yes, of course.
I have to confess, I hadn't read Treasure Island since I was a very small boy and I'd completely forgotten about it. But we're making a big thing out of it. And here is the entire Treasure Island condensed into 14 quotations. If you want the really fast version.
That is
already the lives of 17 men from the Hispaniola. Loading some of the treasure on board the Hispaniola, but leaving
Well, that's good. So you can come here and read Treasure Island in a space of about 30 seconds. Probably.
Or if you can't be bothered to read it, you can stand here
taking a small part of the treasure with him.
and they will tell you the story. Again, condensed into about 4 minutes.
Not bring me back again to that accursed
Of course, we've got the
and the worst
Admiral
dreams
Benbow
I've
song
ever
up there
Yes.
as well.
That's where the story begins with Jim Hawkins, his parents running that, meeting Long
I
John
reading
Silver.
Treasure Island to my son and then walking down the road to the Benbow to share and so,
alright?
so
Richard. Alright?
look at that. And then we've got the pistol.
Obviously, there's a bit of a light show that picks out elements. So the pistol is highlighted when we talk about
Right,
how
I
Jack
see.
Hawkins kills Israel Hands.
Yeah.
Here's the apple barrel that Jim hides in, and over here's the pirates talking about
Yeah.
conquering Long John Silver's crutch, and so on. If I can show you this chap.
Yes.
This is Long John Silver.
Oh, wow.
Who it is actually is a chap called W.E. Henley, who everybody's forgotten, apart from maybe Nelson Mandela when he was with us. He wrote Invictus, the poem I Am the Captain of My Soul. But he was a great friend of Robert Louis Stevenson. He'd lost a leg in childhood to tuberculosis, but he was a big, bluff man. And eventually Stevenson wrote to him and said, when I wrote Treasure Island, I based Long John Silver on you.
Oh, wow.
So, and Rodin, the famous sculptor, made a number of busts of him, which we tried to borrow for the exhibition, but we couldn't. But St Paul's Cathedral allowed us to do a laser scan, and that's a laser scan of the bust. And of course, another great influence on Stevenson was Daniel Defoe, Robinson Crusoe.
Yes, of course.
Author. He also written quite a few books on pirates.
So obviously there's, I mean, just everything that's we can see around here. You could spend hours reading all of the bits and pieces. We're having to do a little bit of a whistle stop tour, but yeah, this
Yes,
is.
we've only got to the first section.
Yeah, I'm conscious that we won't make it through to the end,
won't
so
get to
let's
the end.
keep going.
Yeah.
So we're on to the Treasure Island film now.
I was surprised. 30 films made of Treasure Island,
Oh,
which
really?
is phenomenal. And that's kind of excluding all the television ones that have been made. I thought it must be the most popular film of a book ever made.
You can
But
see some film posters still going
Yeah,
up
we're
there.
still mounting.
Yeah.
the last project that Walt Disney ever did while he was alive was the Pirates of the Caribbean ride in Disneyland.
Yeah.
Which of course then materialised into this fabulous film franchise.
So the ride came before the film.
Yes, yeah.
There you go. You learn something every
And
day.
there are a few references in the film to the ride, but not that many. And now, of course, it's taken on a life of its own, and the ride now replicates some of the elements of the film. So every Disney place has a Jack Sparrow in its
Yeah.
Pirates ride.
Yeah. Pirates of Penzance.
Pirates of Penzance, yes. Which was kind of the great kind of ending of the myth that pirates were kind of serious, noble people. They become much more fun after Gilbert and Sullivan get
Yeah.
And none more, I don't think it's playing at the moment, I won't play it because it'll disturb. Captain Pugwash.
Oh, of course, yeah.
You're probably far too young to remember Captain Pugwash.
No, I do remember, I'm afraid.
But his daughter, John Ryan's daughter, has lent us all this fabulous stuff to show how it was actually done. It was too expensive to do stop motion in those days, so they just had little tabs which would animate the arms.
Oh, really?
Then we'll just show you a few clips from some of the best known pirate films like Captain Blood, Treasure Island, and of course Peter Pan.
I've just noticed that how you've got these screens, you've kind of made them into sails at the
yes.
end. That's fantastic.
Yes, the thing about pirates, it's theatre. It's about making drama. I mean, they didn't necessarily want to go into fights and kill people. The idea was to scare people with the terror of it. So all we could do was make a theatrical exhibition.
Yes. And talking of which, this is dramatic here.
This is an art piece commissioned from Queer Kerno.
Okay.
Because, of course, lots of people have taken up pirates as kind of emblems of rebellion, but the LGBTQ community have really kind of expressed interest in this idea that pirates represented rebelliousness, represented a kind of freedom that just wasn't available to other people. And there's no doubt about it, if you were a pirate, you were probably much better off than you were serving in the Navy or the Merchant Navy. You might have a much shorter life expectancy, but you'd be more prosperous in the meantime.
And of course, not all pirates were men, were they?
Well, no, but we only know definitely of 2 women pirates. So we can't know for certain if there were more. I mean, as we know, there's lots of instances, say, in the army of women disguising themselves as men and never discovered.
Yeah.
So it's not beyond the bounds of possibility that was also true of pirates, but we probably never know. All those records kind of get lost.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But of course, we make a great thing out of it, but in the Caribbean, where all this was going on, they're not so interested in that sort of thing now. They don't have this obsession with pirates that we seem to do.
So why is that? Why do you think? Why have we got such an obsession with?
Well, because of people like Stevenson, like Walt Disney, who've created for us this mythology that they were kind of fun-loving, going out, having adventures, completely fictitious view. But in fact, they were much, much rougher. It was a highly violent world. But again, having said that, can I just show you this? Just so that. I mean, it may seem incongruous to have a Kalashnikov next to a cutlass, but the idea is that the reason why people in, say, the Red Sea, the Gulf of Aden, turn to piracy is exactly the same reason why people in 1720 were turning to piracy. It's because of lack of economic opportunities. You are forced into piracy in much the same way people in Somalia lost their fishing. What else could they do? They turned to piracy and robbing people. In the end of the 18th century, peace broke out, which is a really bad thing for a sailor. You suddenly become unemployed. What do? You've got to make a living. The merchant navy was full. Why not turn to piracy? It's your best hope.
And so there is a link there with. Now, tell me if I'm getting this wrong, Eric. With privateers and pirates, is that right?
Yeah, it's kind of that's a very interesting question because there's this kind of thin line. A privateer is a pirate, but one sanctioned by the government to attack foreign vessels.
Yeah.
But if you step over the line and attack vessels of your own country, you are then a pirate.
Yeah, and presumably that line was crossed every now and
Yes,
then,
yeah.
especially when work dried up.
Yeah, indeed. And no better example than Captain Kidd, of which we've actually got his commission to be a privateer.
Oh, really?
I'm just trying to remember where it is. I think it's just round the corner here.
Thomas Howard, murdered, 1703.
This was the commission given to him.
Samuel Endless, fate unknown after 1699.
But of course he discovered it was actually going to be much more profitable to turn to piracy himself.
Right.
And he was eventually caught taken back to England, put on trial, hung, put in a gibbet cage, and that was the end of poor old Captain Kidd.
And that's more the reality of it than the theatrical side of it.
Sadly, yes,
Yeah.
I mean, you can see kind of images of, this is the Penzance Park's execution dock on the Thames. And this man on the horse here, that's an Admiralty oar, because they used to hang them and display their bodies at the high water mark, the low water mark, because it was Admiralty jurisdiction, not the civilian court jurisdiction.
Right. Yeah, so that really is the harsh reality of being a pirate. And you can see a lot of the...
Yeah, these are the typical kind of weapons that they would have used: muskets, cutlasses. Obviously, you can't have a rapier or a longsword when you're fighting in close quarters.
Yeah.
But kind of small weapons like this, great, but only for one shot, but then a very useful club.
Right, yeah, of course.
I mean, the extraordinary thing, though, is how few pirates there were at this time from Cornwall itself. I mean, you'd expect a lot from this area, but strangely, there were pirates at earlier periods, but not in this so-called Golden Age. I think there's only one or two that are known about.
Really?
But of course, we know the stories of the captains. We don't tend to know the stories of the ordinary crewmen. So there may be much more. We just don't know their stories.
Yeah. I mean, there's lots more that we've not seen, but before we go, we must just see one of the more gruesome exhibits here in the museum. So,
well,
if you're watching this with children, maybe it might be time to switch off at this point, but we'll just explain to us what we're about to see.
Well, it's very important to realise that this was a very brutal age. And if you were caught for piracy, you were very likely going to be hung. But occasionally you were not only hung, after that your body was put in a gibbet cage and left there to rot. In fact, Captain Kidd's body was put in a gibbet and put on the banks of the Thames, allegedly to discourage other people to turn to piracy. Whether it worked or not, who knows. But that was the thing. But it was quite a humiliating thing to happen to your body. And we have on show here one of the earliest gibbet cages that survived. This is about 1730.
Right.
It wasn't actually used for a pirate, but it was used for a local murderer down in Rye, who'd attempted to murder the mayor of the town, but in fact murdered somebody else. But his body, after he was hung, was put in a gibbet cage and left for 20 years in the marshes of Rye. And allegedly people took away his bones. But unfortunately, the way that it survived is with a small piece of the poor man's skull still embedded.
Yeah,
it can't be taken out without destroying the actual item itself.
If I just come back a little bit so we can see it all there. So there we can see where the body would have been held, and there we can see the remains of the skull still in there.
It's a gruesome piece, but I think it's important that we realise it was not the world of John Depp. It was a harsh, harsh world where there were cruel punishments for what we would now think were fairly minor crimes, because they weren't attacking Spanish galleons, they weren't getting away with vast quantities of gold. They were stealing from small merchant ships, they were stealing nets from fishing boats just to make a living. But it was a harsh world, and this is where you might have ended up if you were a pirate.
So, final question, Eric. If you were going to choose to be a pirate from any age, from whether a real pirate or one from a movie, which pirate would you be?
I think it would be Henry Every, because he not only accumulated a vast fortune, he disappeared, and his fortune has never been found. So that's the one I would be.
That's the best way to go, isn't it? Yeah.
Thank you very much for showing us around. So it opens this Friday at the National Maritime Museum Cornwall. And how long does it go on for?
2 years.
2 years. Fantastic.
So
Well, it's the right place to be, isn't it?
It is.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Eric.